Today we got some stories of some very sus teachers, to put it lightly. You'll at least find these stories interesting, so sit back, relax, subscribe if you're new, and let's jump right into it.
And we're crying, crying, crying like a wounded animal.
We're going to call the subscriber who submitted the first girl Peter. I'm so stupid. We're going to call the subscriber who submitted the first story Peter. So there's a girl in Peter's grade who we're just gonna call her. Let's just call her Kate. This is the name of my friend from a very long time ago. Still very good friends with her. That'll be her name, right? So this girl Kate in Peter's class. He was in a pretty difficult class, and look, Peter was totally judging a book by its cover. Kate just didn't seem that smart to him, and it's pretty. You can't really be doing that. I found that a lot of people that are unassuming just absolutely kill it in class. Like, they absolutely just destroy their classwork. It's incredible, right? And, Peter had also witnessed this. He was just thinking, like, I'm talking to this girl in class. I ask her a question. She's like, I don't know. And then gets like 100% on every single test. Which, look, sometimes people aren't trying to be helpful in class. I get it. Like, you're trying to focus on your own stuff, and someone comes in asking the most basic questions. So instead of having to spend a lot of time answering them, you just say, I don't know. So Peter he's just weirded out because he's like, this girl doesn't seem like she's smart, but I know for a fact that she's killing it because when the teacher hands back the tests, he doesn't do it so nonchalantly. And Peter sits close enough to see that this girl is doing really well. However, the story goes a little bit deeper than that. So anyways, Peter was just like very confused because, she would not answer any of his questions. She just didn't seem like she was really up to speed with the class. But Peter eventually just chalked it up to, okay, she just doesn't want to help me in class. She might sound like she's not that smart, but she is that smart. I should stop judging a book by its cover. Come on now, Peter, you know better than this. However, Peter would also notice just some weird things, such as that she was just very close with the teacher. Like, the teacher and her would, look, I'm on good terms with a lot of teachers here. I'm on good terms with, I'm just, very friendly with them. Things are nice like that. However, it's not as if they walk by and then we have small talk, right? And even actually, I've had some small talk with teachers before, and I'm friendly with them, but it's different. It's very professional. And when I have friendships with them, it's like almost a air of professionalism in the friendship. There was a air of flirting in their conversations, and that was very weird. Because, you can almost tell when someone speaks to someone else, there's almost I don't want to say a scent, but I'm trying to say some kind of something that's very vague, and you can't really point to it, but it exists. And Peter was almost picking up on this when the girl was talking to, her teacher. And it was very weird. So it turns out that, Peter hears about this after the fact. Because the teacher is fired randomly, and there's a new teacher subbed into the class. Very strange. Peter is talking with his friends at lunch, and one of his friends is like, dude, I just heard the craziest stuff ever from Chris. Chris was some other kid in their class, right? He's like, dude, apparently, the teacher, he says the name of the teacher Peter had. He's like, yeah. He's like, dude, apparently Chris was just walking around trying to, he left something in that classroom. He opens it up, and dude, the teacher and this girl are just full on making out on their desk. It's ridiculous. And at this point, Peter's like, oh, well, that might explain a thing or two. And basically what was going on is they they apparently matched on Tinder or whatever. And then they just then they realized oh, wow, that this is a student in my class. By all laws, I can't be doing this. But they decided to go through it either way. This girl was getting personal favors of, getting a good grade in the class, and the teacher was receiving their own personal favors, whatever that might be. So the teacher was obviously fired, but the girl was not punished since she was technically the victim in the situation. It was a power dynamic, and very obvious power dynamic. However, one thing that Peter noticed was that the new teacher had one thing in common with the old teacher, that he was very nonchalant with handing back tests. So Peter could see the results of people's tests if he really wanted to. And one thing that was true was that, Kate, the girl, was not doing as well as she did before. By not doing as well, I mean 60% less good. So if she got 100 before, she was getting 40s now. We're going to call the next subscriber who submitted the story Lois. So anyways, Lois was not doing well in a college class. It was just not going well. Look, I'm in discrete math right now. If you're any computer science, engineering, or math majors there, you might have to take this class. Just be aware, it's a little tough. Yeah, so it's a difficult class. I'm definitely not doing great, and I am in office hours all the time. No shame going to office hours. It's a really good tool, definitely a good thing to use, and if the teacher is good at it, it might help you significantly in the class. So anyways, right, Lois is going to office hours because she needs help in this class. So when she gets to the professor's hours, right, or the office, she gets to the office hours and no one is there except the professor, right? It's a big office, whatever. He looks over and is like, "Oh, Lois, come in." Lois was even surprised that this professor knew her name because it was a pretty big lecture class. There was a lot of people there, and it wasn't a small, tight-knit classroom environment that you might expect the teacher to know your name. She was a little taken off guard by that, just by looking at her, knew who he was, but she also sent him an email saying, "I'm coming," so maybe he was prepared that way. Who knows, right? So Lois walks in, and he's like, "Okay, so what problems are we having?" So Lois takes out her paper. She, puts on the table, shows like, "Okay, I'm not getting that." He tries to explain it. She's like, "Okay, I think I get that now." Points to something else. For about 20 minutes or so, they just go through like all the things that Lois isn't understanding, the problems she's having, all the stuff right like that, right? And eventually, the teacher goes on to explain, or he says something that is a little bit weird. He says, "So, Lois, I see that, this class is very difficult. This class is hard. It's hard for a lot of other students too. And I don't know if you're trying to go to grad school, but I understand, you need a pretty good grade in this class. Look, and I can't just give out a grade to someone, even if I know they're trying, that I can't give you an A if you're not doing A work." And Lois kind of looks at him and says, "Yeah, I understand. I am trying to go to grad school, so it would be cool if I did well in this class." And that's when the teacher says something that's a little red flag, right? He says, "So, Lois, there's actually multiple ways. There's many ways to do well in my class. There's many ways. Some students, just perform well, but other students can't perform well. I'm sure you're very bright, smart, but you're not a polymath. You can't do everything correctly. You can't do everything perfectly." And Lois is like, "Sus, but okay." And he goes on to say, "Yeah. So other students, students I really like, that I have more personal relationships with, they tend to do better in the class even if their work doesn't reflect it." And that's when the teacher goes on to basically say that if she wants to do well in the class, that she'd have to get to know him better and that she can come back to his place that Friday. Lois already knew what to do. She did not accept the offer. She said, "Oh, yeah, maybe. Okay, well, thank you. You've answered all my questions, whatever." And she immediately went to the dean's office, explained to them what happened. The dean's office went into a full-fledged investigation, found that this is not the first occurrence of something like this happening, and yeah, the teacher was fired. Goodbye, teacher. Rip Bozo. Man took the L, and man deserved the L. Guys, if anything ever weird like that, even if a teacher says something that just seems a little bit strange, always report it. There's no harm in doing so. If it's nothing, then nothing will happen, but if it's something, gotta protect yourself and other people. Let's hop into the next story. We're gonna call the subscriber who submitted the story Meg. We're in a Family Guy theme. We got Peter, then Lois, then Meg, then we may or may not have Stewie for the next one. You guys will just have to wait around and figure it out. Anyways, so Meg had a friend in class who was secretly had a big old crush on the teacher, whatever. They were sophomores in college, and this teacher was a younger teacher, whatever. He was just out of he was in grad school, but somehow he still got a teaching gig, might be part-time. I don't know. He was late 20s or really early 30s, so he was still a younger guy or whatever. And Meg's friend was very beautiful and very out there, but she also would develop these crushes and romanticize and all this stuff, right? So she developed this crush on this teacher. And, she would be to Meg, very jokingly be "I can't wait until the day that, let's say, Mr. Steve, right? That Mr. Steve and I are walking down the aisle and, my dad gives me away to Mr. Steve and there's rice being thrown everywhere and the doves are going around and I can already imagine my wedding dress." And Meg is just looking at her let's keep studying, because they'd like sit around to study for the test, and then Meg's friend would literally just go into a I guess a kind of a delusional rant about how they are meant to be together and speaking about their future wedding. And Meg's just like, man, I'm just trying to prepare for this test, man. Like, why do I even study with you anymore? Well, studies with her because that's her only friend in the class. But anyways, one day, Meg is just like, goes, or not Meg, Meg is kind of just sitting around, and her friend comes up to her. And her friend's like, oh my God, I found his Instagram. And like pulls up her phone, and sure enough, it is the teacher's Instagram, or it is most likely, it's his first and last name, and the profile pic looks just like him, right? So Meg is like, I don't know if you should follow that. I doubt, because it was a private account, no photos, whatever. He's like, he's probably not going to accept it. And like, if he does, that might be weird. Like, I don't know what the rules are, stuff like that, right? And so, obviously Meg's friend would not listen to her and been like, well, this is my future husband, so of course. So she requests him. And Meg's like, dude, he's just going to decline the request or ignore it. Like, nothing's going to happen. 2 hours later, Meg is just sitting in her dorm room, and boom, dorm room door slams open. And she hears her friend screaming. She's like, oh my God, Meg. And she runs over, shows Meg like her phone, right? And sure enough, the teacher didn't only accept the follow request, but requested to follow back. So Meg's like, oh, okay, that's a little weird, but I guess just because he knows you're a student, I don't know. And she's like, oh my God, should I message him? And Meg's like, no, do not message this guy. That is a bad idea. And she's like, too late, I already did. And she shows that she actually already messaged him, being like, hi, I know, like, I go to school, but I'm in love with you. You're so, just like a whole ranting fangirl message. This girl might as well made an Instagram stan page for this guy, bro. She might as well have done that. But, yeah, anyways, Meg's like, dude, delete that. Unsend that message immediately. Poor guy's probably already seen the notification. That's going to be so weird in class. Like, and Meg's like, oh, man, I'm sitting next to you, and I'm going to be, I'm by association by you, I'm going to be looped in. What if he grades us both poorly for that? And, like, Meg's friend is not even listening. She's like, oh, my God, I can already think of our wedding. Whatever, right? And so later that night, Meg's friend walks into Meg's room a little bit more calmly, and she's like, Meg, I don't know what to do here. And she flips the phone around, and Meg takes the phone and looks at it, and Meg's face just drops. She's like, what? The guy responds and says, haha, I'm so flattered. Like, I'm actually free this Friday night if you want to go to the insert fancy restaurant in the area. And Meg's friend's like, I don't know if I like this anymore. Bro look, yeah, I get it. You had this whole fake fantasy, whatever, and then you actually go to it, and you're like, oh, this is actually kind of weird. And Meg's like, look, that's weird. Don't do it. And she's like, maybe I should, though. We are meant to be. She says that jokingly, but Meg can just tell by the look on her face that she was not a fan of how her fantasy turned into reality, right? And yeah, Meg convinced her, look, don't do it. That's weird. That's strange. And the teacher got let go later on for unrelated reasons, but they were different, like being strange reasons. So this teacher was kind of strange, and they definitely both dodged a bullet. And Meg and this girl look back on it as still like the craziest interaction they've ever had. So we're going to call the subscriber submitted the next and final story, Stewie. Stewie was a sophomore in high school. And Stewie was taking French. And I struggle with languages, so I can definitely relate to my guy Stewie here. By the way, comment Family Guy down below. Family Guy's the secret word of the day. Anyways, right, so I can relate. I took Arabic in high school, which is, I took it because it's an uncommon language to be offered in schools in the United States. I was the worst in my class. At the college I go to now, there's a language requirement, right? So I took Spanish 111, the very basic Spanish class. I thought, I'm a good student. I should know how to do that. Dude, I was the worst in the class. I got the lowest grade out of everyone. It was a disaster. If my teacher wasn't cool with me, I should have failed. He didn't fail me, not because I deserved to fail, but I didn't because he was nice. So Stewie was struggling in French, so I can relate to him. He's not a language guy. So he goes up to the office and they say, because like basically his grade got so bad that they forced him to get a language tutor. And so, yeah, sure enough, he signs up for it. He gets an email. This girl named Jessica is going to be his language tutor. He's like, okay, cool. How bad can this be? So he goes over. They decide to, like, they email back and forth or whatever. And Jessica's like, hey, my name's Jessica. I'm a senior. I'm in, like, French 4 honors. I will be your French tutor or whatever. And Stewie was, like, failing French 1 or whatever. So he's like, okay, cool. This girl knows what she's talking about. And so sure enough, they decide to meet in the library. And they sit down. And another detail, and Stewie tells me this, like, he doesn't want to seem like an egotistical butthole, but he just says this as kind of a fact, which take this however you want. He said, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm definitely not a bad-looking guy, and yeah, that's going to be important for later on. So they sit down, and, the French tutor, whatever, senior girl, sitting down. Stewie's at the table. She's like the official tutor for him. So they're starting the tutoring session. And Stewie's is garbling over all the words, can't remember anything. I can relate to that. I feel bad for my guy. But anyways, garbling over all the words, struggling. Straight up struggling right now. And sure enough, she's like, at one point, she's like, wow, like, this is really hard for you. And Stewie's like, dude, what? She's like, so, okay, I don't know if we're going to make that much progress, so tell me about yourself. And Stewie's looking at her like, what? I'm taking time out of my day, to spend time to try and learn this language because I have to. I'm required to for some reason. Not that I'm going to go to France or anything. And during this time that I would wish I'd be doing something else, instead of you helping me, you're asking me to talk about myself because it's going so bad? And that's when the girl says, well, I guess more specifically, I mean, you must have a lot of girlfriends in your class, right? And Stewie's like, sus. And he's like, not right now, actually, kind of in between. And she's like, oh, really? What do you think about older girls? And Stewie's like, oh, no, dude. Yeah, so Stewie started to realize where this is going. And Stewie's like, I'm kind of cool with whatever. I really think we should get back to the French, though. I'm really falling behind. And this girl, the tutor, right, Jessica, I think that's what I called her. Jessica was like, no, Stewie, you're doing so good. I think, that's enough for you today. But we still have to be here for another 20 minutes, so yeah. What are your thoughts about older girls? Stewie's like, oh, my God, dude, what? Dude, what? Oh, my God. Yeah, so sure enough, Stewie is basically trying to, like, fiend off her attempts. She's like, oh, well, I definitely know some people. Basically talking about herself, but like, I know some people, aka some people being me. So yeah, for the next 20 minutes, Stewie just very awkwardly fiends off her attempts, tries to be like, nah, let's do some French or whatever. And sure enough, after that whole thing went down, he told his boys all about it, and they were like, that's crazy, dude, you should go for that. And Stewie's like, no. Stewie sent a request to change his tutor, says, the chemistry wasn't that good, let me try someone else. And sure enough, there was a lot of French tutors, so they just swapped it out again. And the most awkward thing happened because Stewie was in the library with his new tutor, like a couple sessions in. And this tutor was actually like, this guy was like very smart. He was already into college, even though it was like, he was a senior, like he got in exactly where he wanted. He was great tutor, right? And he really understood the language and he knew how to teach it. That's very important. Not just being smart and good at it, but you know how to teach it. And Jessica, the ex-tutor, right, walks by and is like, so, Stewie, I see you threw me out in the trash for someone else. Stewie's like, very funny. But Jessica keeps walking, and like the way that she said it didn't seem like she was joking. And the tutor looks up and is like, dude, that used to be your tutor? And Stewie's like, yeah. He's like, dude, that girl's so weird. The tutor literally says, that girl's so weird. And Stewie's like, do I have a story for you about her? Click on the video on screen right now. I know you'll enjoy it. Just click.